Ladies and gents, PepperBelly here, and in this video I want to discuss something that I've thought about quite a bit. And, well, I'm assuming you know because you read the title of the video, and it's basically the ultimate Star Wars game I would personally like to see. Because I think it has a ton of potential to be rather epic, and probably the best Star Wars game ever made. But, you know, that's just my own personal opinion. There might be some bias there. I don't really know. But, I mean, I'm thinking of taking all the greatest aspects from the games that I thoroughly enjoy and love, but just kind of putting a Star Wars theme on it. So a lot of people were concerned that Star Wars Battlefront would essentially be Battlefield 4 reskinned to look like Star Wars, which, in a sense, there is some truth there, but ultimately, the game does feel and play differently. Essentially, what I'm thinking of is a game that is like Squad. If you guys have followed my channel, you've seen my videos of Squad, talked about that a lot. It's a realistic, authentic game that focuses heavily on teamwork and coordination. Take essentially that, but slap a Star Wars theme on top of it. Now you have one of the best Star Wars games ever made. I guess you can possibly say that a mod can be made and achieve the exact same thing, which is kind of what I'm hoping for, ultimately, but I'm just trying to, you know, I'm just talking for the sake of talking. I'm going to be discussing exactly why I think the potential here is huge, because I'm a Star Wars fan, you know, I love Star Wars, we all do, but at the same time, let's be honest here, Star Wars is a little bit kiddish. It's more for children, you know, for young kids. Kids like Star Wars, not so much Star Trek and other more mature type of stuff. Now, if you guys know me, follow my channel for a long time, you're pretty much aware that I love tactical shooters and milsims. They're like my bread and butter. They're the ultimate games, the game genre I like to focus on. And if you guys are familiar, Star Wars actually released a game that achieved some level of that, and that game was called Star Wars Republic Commando, which, to put it simply, that game was amazing. Really well done, phenomenal experience. It allowed for a more realistic take on the Star Wars universe by being darker, grittier, and had this other atmosphere that just no other Star Wars game can relate to. It was like a whole other, it was in a league of its own within the Star Wars universe, which is awesome. And the game was actually planned to have sequels, but it unfortunately never got them because the game didn't sell that great back in 2005. Those sequels were supposed to be Imperial Commando, which was actually planned to be developed. It was already like the ideas were flowing, they were getting the ball rolling just before Republic Commando was even released. And then it was rumored to have another sequel after Imperial Commando that was going to be called Rebel Commando, which was to be based on one of your squad mates who goes by the name of Sev in Delta Squad back in Republic Commando. At the very end of the game, he essentially just disappears. You guys are forced to abandon him, and then you never hear from him again, because the game ends essentially right after he disappears. So, you know, spoilers, too bad, too late. So if you guys never played the game, well, I'm sorry, but you should definitely go play the game. It's freaking awesome. So the whole point of Rebel Commando was to be about Sev fighting for the rebels instead of the Imperials. So, I mean, like, they had a ton of potential for what could have been really phenomenal tactical shooters in the Star Wars universe. Because the games were completely different. As I said, in a league of its own, different style of gameplay, more realistic, grittier, darker atmospheres, definitely intended for more mature audiences. It wasn't like, oh, this game's for kids. Like, Battlefront can be seen as more of a game for kids. I'm talking about Battlefront 1 and 2. Essentially, the reboot now, too, like, by DICE, essentially can be said the same thing. It's a casual game. It's not super competitive. It's not super intense. Not super dark and gritty. It's more or less reliving the set pieces of the movies, which, as we all know, weren't super mature. Republic Commando was that. So I'm thinking of a game in my mind that would be tremendously awesome, would be to just give me the realistic and authentic experience from a game like Squad and have the Star Wars theme slapped on top of it. Because in my mind, the idea of actually roaming through the environments with multiple squads and having coordinated teams going after certain objectives, I don't know how you would probably make the objectives in a game like that, but I mean, they'd probably be similar to Star Wars Battlefront, just a little bit different. Everything would be manned by a player, so instead of the AT-ATs being on rails, you'd probably actually have people in them, which is probably one of the biggest aspects I think would really benefit a game like this, would be the vehicular aspect of it. Because imagine AT-STs, alright, like ATSTs would actually require a 2-man crew versus just one guy spawning into it. You would actually have a driver and a gunner. The same way that Project Reality and Squad is going to do things in the future with vehicles like tanks and Humvees and Jeeps and helicopters and whatever, you know? There's a lot of potential there. And I'm thinking ATSTs also, maybe a crew of 3. And you got a commander, a driver, and a gunner. Like, there's a lot of potential for how you can make those vehicles work in a game like this, you know? It would be something to really be in awe of, in my mind. Because there isn't enough darker, grittier Star Wars games. We need something like that. I think it was Star Wars 1313 was trying to go in that direction, but unfortunately the game got canceled, so none of us got to see a more mature Star Wars game intended for people 18 years and older. Even though we all know like 12-year-olds are going to play it, but it's besides the point. I mean, I was 12 when I played friggin' tactical shooters and super mature games. It kind of turned me into who I am now. So I mean, I don't know. Like, the idea of, like, actually, one thing I discussed in the first look I had of Squad during the alpha. Alright, the first thing, or one of the things I mentioned was the downtime, right? I discussed what it feels like, how authentic it is to really just sit around, dig into a position, and wait to encounter the enemy. Now, imagine those same scenarios. Or, like, just get in there, guys. Just visualize this. You're in a thick jungle, right? This thick, the forest moon of Endor. Fuck it, let's just go there. The forest moon of Endor, thick jungle. Well, forest, technically. It's not really a jungle, but anyway. And you're digging into positions. So you got foliage all around you, visibility's low, because there's so much foliage. And you're digging into a position, you're creating a fob, you're building turret emplacements, you're getting ready to just set up a defensive, right? Waiting for the enemy to probably come through your blockade. Or your defensive. And then, all of a sudden, you're hearing footsteps resonating through the environment. The ground shakes just a little bit. And an ATST scouting out your position, because that's literally what ATSTs are designed to do. If you go and look at the Wikipedia for all that stuff, ATST, first of all, if you don't even know, stands for All-Terrain Scout Transport. The whole point of it was originally designed to scout out positions. It wasn't like a heavy hitter. It's not to dive into combat and start killing things. And in fact, that like the sides of the vehicle are extremely weak. So the front, it has full frontal armor, which is the whole point of it. It's supposed to be looking at the enemy. And if it gets engaged, it points itself at the enemy so it can take the brunt of the damage while being able to engage. But if it gets hit from the sides or back, it's weaker, so it's, you know, in fact, that's the whole reason why on Endor they use the freaking logs to slam into the sides of him and takes it out that way, which is ridiculous, but that's kind of their excuse for that. So, I mean, imagine just like, you know, the wind's blowing through the trees, it's all quiet, and then you just start hearing that, you know, you just start hearing it coming closer to you, and it has this intimidating sound, and you're just listening to it get closer and closer and closer until it sees you, and then you're forced to engage it. And then it starts shooting at you, and then it you know, relays information back to the team, and you know, informing them where you are, and then more vehicles, more troops start storming your position, and maybe AT-AT start walking towards you. You know, you hear them in the distance too. Like, there's so much potential for immersion in a game like that, because we all know Squad does what it does in an exceptional way, and throwing that kind of gameplay, the core mechanics of that game, the realism and authenticity, but giving you a Star Wars theme, to me, seems like what can potentially be what us mature individuals would love to see from the Star Wars franchise. And again, pretty much all of you guys can probably say that. Mods, right? You could just probably, because I mean, there's going to be a lot of mod support for Squad, so I imagine when Squad releases, someone can probably come up with a mod for it. Like, I mean, if you look at it right now, Arma 3 has the Imperial Assault mod. It's very limited. I mean, it has like the Scout Imperial Troop, and you got that little bike thing they ride on, and the pistol. That's it. And the mod team for that is trying to obviously turn it into something pretty crazy. And of course, they got the Halo mod as well. But I mean, like, I would love to see, I guess, a mod. Not so much a game, because I mean, a game is obviously a little bit out there, but just a mod of all the assets from Star Wars put into a game like Squad. I think it can just really highlight something we haven't seen done before in a way that would be really, really fucking awesome. Like, I don't know. To me, that would be something that's more inspired than most traditional games out there. Like, it would just, to me, it'd be more interesting. I don't really know why. I kind of explained it through this video, which we're going on 10 minutes now. I try to explain it the best way I possibly can. Like, it's kind of hard to get in my head and picture what I'm picturing, but to me, it's like, it just, the potential for something to be utterly amazing is there. You know, like, I would love to see something like that personally. I don't know about you guys. I'm trying to think of ways I can describe it further, but we all know the firefights and the shooting mechanics and everything of Squad are like top notch, right? Obviously they still need to be reworked, like the weapon sway and bobbing and all that stuff needs to change at some point in the future to accommodate more realism, but just picturing that in a Star Wars theme, like, I don't know, the whole thing just blows my mind. And picturing the maps, you know, the locations, all the factions you can play as, you know, the droids, which is like the Confederacy, you got Imperials, maybe even the Republic. Well, actually, if you're going to have the Confederacy, you'd have to have the Republic, because they were the only ones who engage each other. Imperials, Rebels, essentially 4 factions, but you can have so many crazy locations. Obviously, Hoth would be the biggest one, and you'd have to do it differently from the way the Star Wars Battlefront does it, because you would have to make the AT-ATs actually physically manned. And then obviously, fighters would be done differently as well, because they'd be flying more realistically. It was realistic as you can get it for, like, starfighters, but anyway, I don't know. The idea of it, to me, sounds awesome. But then again, this could just be me going off on one of my own brain farts where I just picture and visualize things exponentially. With that, I don't know, because like this always happens to you guys. Like, I'll sit down, I'll think of a game where I'll be playing it and I'll be like, man, this is what I just this combined with this would just be holy shit. You know, it's kind of the same idea between, or that the lead developer Kim from 0 Point Software, creator of Interstellar Marines, the same idea that he has for that game. You know, he's got 3 games, which are the key ingredients for what he wants Interstellar Marines to achieve, which is Half-Life 1, not 2, System Shock 2, and Rainbow Six. So to me, it's like, give me Star Wars with squad gameplay, and it's like, you got a really awesome Star Wars game. So, I don't know, in my mind, it's something that seems pretty damn awesome. I would love to see it, because Star Wars is awesome, but I feel like a huge part of it is being neglected because it's nobody takes it as seriously as it could potentially be. Like, the Clone Wars, to me, should have been super bloody, super gory, and super intense. I mean, PTSD, you know, like physical and psychological issues should arise from shit like that, you know, from the Clone Wars. And I feel like that's never touched on. Like, you look at the animated show, The Clone Wars, and it's obviously a cartoon, right? Like, it's not... I mean, I would love to see the Band of Brothers equivalents of the Clone Wars. You know, give me that, and it's like you have something fucking great, you know? But anyway, we're approaching 13 minutes. We're actually over 13 minutes now, so I want to wrap the video up, guys. That's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to talk about. Let me know what you think. I honestly have no idea, because I love Star Wars, but I also want to see a realistic Star Wars game done right. And the best way to do that in my mind is simply just to copy Squad. And the best way to do that in my mind is just to create a mod for Squad. So, I don't know. I am curious to see what you guys think of this. So, thank you guys for joining me on this video. My name's PepperBelly, and I will see you guys on the next one.